thank you very much for having me. Like you said, my name is Pierre. I'm originally, my past life was in the agency world. I worked for a company called Ogilvy in Paris for a few years, then in South Africa, then went back overseas and came back. So, and really, I've been involved with Humanz now for a couple of years. We're a pretty young company, so I know when you see often when you see a company logo, you think it's like a really big deal. But there's about 30 of us worldwide now. We're about 3 years old as a company. Most people think we're from South Africa, but we're actually not. We're originally the company's from Israel, from Tel Aviv. And the reason I'm in South Africa is the first country we launched in after Israel. Israel is a really small country. So after having being really successful in Israel really quickly, we decided to move to a different country, and our first investors as a tech startup from South Africa. So we thought, hey, let's try South Africa. I had a network here. I knew a few people, so we started here, and now we've launched in a lot of other countries. We're in Turkey, we're in Nigeria, we've just launched in Brazil. We're about to launch in India, a couple of weeks away from that. But all of our marketing happens out of South Africa. So that's also why there's this kind of extra little focus on South Africa, and we've got this extra special relationship with South Africa. So without getting kind of too technical and doing the whole sales pitch to you, in short, we're a pretty young company. Like I said, we're about 3 years old, and we entered as a tech startup. We entered the market where we realized there were a lot of other platforms out there and competitors. But what we realized is that there were basically two types of platforms in the influencer marketing space. There were marketplace platforms, which are for better or lack of a better explanation, like an Uber for influencers. So you had people who are influencers, who claim to be influencers, who sign up on the one end, and they tell you what they want about themselves. And then on the other hand, you had marketers who sign up and then made working together really easy, but without any kind of real in-depth data or kind of analysis about what makes these people influential potentially or not, right? Absolutely. But it made working together easy. And then on the other side, you had search engine or kind of big data platforms that sucked data from the back end of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, et cetera, and ran maybe a few calculations on top of it and told you who was potentially an influencer. And what we did with Humanz is we realized that there were a lot of benefits to try to combine both of these things as one thing, but also on top of that, not to rely on the data from the social networks. And I know that sounds really weird, but we basically, we decided to do something that nobody else was doing at the time, which is to build the data from the ground up the way a human would. And what I mean by that is if you are a person working in influencer marketing and you're looking for influencers, you're going to go on Instagram and look for hashtags, look for pictures, look for people. And based on what you see, their profile pictures, their bio, what they post, you're going to figure out, is this a real account? Is this a real person? Are they active? What do they post about? Maybe if you do a few calculation, which of the content gets the most engagement or performs the best, and what kind of content is it? And you'll do that. Now, what we did with Humanz is we created that for, we're doing that calculation using our algorithms, image recognition, natural language processing, some really advanced AI methods for influencers and also for every single one of the followers that has a public profile. And so we do what a human does, but just millions and millions of times faster. And out of that, we then realize who is really influential and in what, and more importantly, who is their real audience and what did they follow that influencer for. So that's it in a nutshell from the advertiser side. And we give them access to a search engine, access to a campaign management function that goes all the way from briefing influencers to talking to them, to contracting them, paying them, approving the results, checking the results, and even tracking all the way to an actual sell on the website if they want to. And then for the influencer, which was never initially we thought we were building a business for marketers. That's what we thought, because we're idiots. But then we realized that actually that the influencer community was really underserved as well. And so we built an app to give access to influencers first to just data. Hey, here's your data, because it's your data. You own it. Go and check it. Not trying to be, the people that own data but don't show you what it is. Here's your data. Here's what we know about you. Check it out. And then based on feedback from influencers that saw the app said, hey, why don't you build a place where we can meet one another and talk to one another? So we built the Connect feature that was really designed by influencers in Israel and in Turkey initially. We built the community feed where people can post and exchange information and tips and advice that was requested by South African influencers. And now we're busy building a lot of other features. A lot of them that has to do with influencers helping them promote themselves and explain what they're good at, what kind of campaigns they want to work on, and make themselves stand out a lot better to advertisers. So really the influencer side was not our core target audience initially, and then we realized actually that it was probably the most important part of it. So I don't want to talk about competitors too much because we do follow what other people are doing and platforms and things like that. But I think influencer marketing is growing really, really fast, and it's becoming a big industry. But it's still a pretty young industry. So I think everybody's got a place to play, and everybody is able to innovate and come up with great ideas. So I think it's good for influencers to go and see what everybody's doing, right? It's not like doesn't have to be an exclusive relationship in one place. I think as a content creator, you've got to find kind of where your opportunities sit and what you can get best from every place, right? So, sure. So I definitely think it's not a question of humans versus other people. What I do think is a little bit unique about Humanz is that we've built our business from the get-go with content creators, with influencers, and we host workshops all the time. Some of the shareholders behind Humanz are influencers themselves. Sure. And so from the get-go, we've always built everything from feedback from the people that use the app, from suggestions from people that use the app. And those suggestions, that feedback goes all the way up to the head of the R&D team, the head of the product team, to myself, to our CEO. And so we're really a business that's focused on trying to understand what do people want, not based on our own ideas, but based on the feedback and the data we're getting from usage from people. So I don't know if that makes us unique, but it's pretty kind of core in our DNA, and we really have the interest of content creators at heart. And one of the reasons behind that, which is maybe like a weird insight we stumbled across, but it's that like many of the roles are blurring. So somebody who is a content creator today is very likely to become a marketer at some point as they build an audience, as they want to try to sell products and sell subscriptions or services or whatever it is. And vice versa, there are many marketers who are brand managers who are building big profiles online and want to leverage that as an influencer. So, so as those roles are kind of blurring, we're taking kind of insights from the market and figuring out kind of what's really going to add the most value to everybody involved. Again, not based on our own agenda, but based on what the community is telling us. So, like I said, the way we calculate our audience and the way we get our data is very different, right? So unlike understanding, maybe let me take a step back actually to answer that, because I think it's an interesting question, and it's about the understanding of influencer marketing between influencers and marketers, or content creators and marketers. And right now, I think a lot of marketers who are dabbling into influencer marketing see it as a media channel. They think about it as, how much reach can I get from these people? Absolutely. And the influencers are responding by saying, okay, how many followers do I have? And that's like the base of the interaction. But actually, that's not where the opportunity lies. We see and we think of influencer marketing down the line as essentially a real disruption of the value chain, where creators are able to provide marketers not only with reach, but more importantly with creative and with insights. And what I mean by that is, if I'm, I don't know, the head of brand A, and I want to market to a target market that's not me, how will I know as like a middle-aged white guy, like how to like interact with my target audience if they're not middle-aged white guy? Now I can go and commission an agency that's probably other middle-aged white guy and try to do it for me. Or I can speak to somebody who's already embedded in that community for insights on what to say, how to sell, how to position my product, how to design my product. And then I can use them to actually create that content or co-create what we're doing and then distribute it. So right now, a lot of that interaction is at that level. What we're trying to provide marketers with is data and information and tools to find people who are embedded in communities, truly influential in those communities, and who have the ability to help you to understand those communities, to create content for those communities, and ultimately reach them and influence them. So I'll tell you a little bit about, so I'll answer this question honestly. I'll tell you what it should be and what we want to do, and sometimes like what the shortcut is, like what the kind of like, so I'll give you both answers. So I think the first one is that most content creators and influencers like say, I'm an influencer, right? Or am I an influencer, I'm not an influencer. And that's completely the wrong question. The question should be, who do you influence? Because everybody influences somebody, right? Like my wife influences me significantly, but that's like a one-to-one relationship, so it doesn't scale up very nicely. So everybody influences somebody. So when a content creator wants to position themselves as a influencer, the question shouldn't be, are you an influencer? Nobody's an influencer, but rather, who do you influence and for what, right? So that's a really important thing. And so from a tech perspective, that's ultimately what we're trying to solve. That's like the holy grail of solving like that concept of influence. So what we look for is we look for information like, what is your focus and your tone from a content perspective? Like, and then who is your real and active audience that engage with your content? So not just who are they and what is your engagement rate, but who is that real and active audience that engage with your content? We get that stats and that data from a ratio we have called Humanz impressions, which shows like if you have 100,000 followers, how many of those followers are real and active? And normally it's somewhere between 20, 30, 40%. It's around that, but that's like your active community. And we look at who they are and are they engaging with you based on what you're saying you're about. So if you say you're a sports and fitness influencers, but they're not engaging with that kind of content, not commenting about that kind of stuff, then is that really what you're influencing? If you catch my drift. So those are the kind of things we look for, but we look for people who know what they're about. So there's a lot of conversations on our board actually around what is your niche? What is your niche? That seems to be like the way people have dubbed it. But what do you know what you're about? And like, what is that? And is that relevant to the advertiser? We then look for what is your real and active audience? And is it a fit for what the advertiser is looking for? So like if you're trying to sell, if you're Kimberly Clark or Kotex and you're trying to sell that product, but that influencer got a primarily an engaged and active male audience, then is there a fit? Maybe not. And then we look for qualitative metrics. So we actually just launched a new system. We've launched a rating system on Humanz a couple of weeks ago, which advertisers that have worked with an influencer can then rate them based on content quality, professionalism, results. And so we look for those as well, because that's becoming more and more important. Because if you think, like a few years ago, you were working on campaigns with like 10, 20 influencers. Now people are starting to work on campaigns with 300, 400, 600 influencers, thanks to technology. And if you think, working with like influencers is difficult, when it's 10, when it's 600, it's even harder. And so professionalism and the way you present yourself and how easy interacting with you and is becoming a really important part of it as well. I think you put it spot on. Like the reality, and I'll be blunt, is that from the marketer's perspective, reach is cheap. Like to reach people is not expensive. To be able to buy, 1,000 impressions on Facebook, like reaching 1,000 people on Facebook is going to cost you 80 Rand, 60 Rand, 40 Rand, depending on who you're trying to target. But somebody with 1,000 followers is not going to get out of bed for 40, 60 or 80 Rand. So the real value of influencer marketing is not the reach. The reach is cheap. The real value of influencer marketing is, who is that person able to influence? What is the content creation ability? And is there some kind of power in associating with that person? Because that person endorses me, therefore there's power in it. So obviously famous people have more endorsement capability, right? Like celebrities and people that are associated with specific people. Great content creators go for a premium. And the reason why number of followers is often used, I think it's like a funny line on my face. I don't know what it is, but anyway, the reason why a number of followers is often used is because to a lot of marketers, it's a proxy metric. They go and say, this person posts about fitness a lot. They have 100,000 followers. It must mean they are influential in fitness. And it's sometimes true, often true, but not always true. So you've got to verify that through the data as well.
100%. And I think the platform does exactly that, right?
That's the aim and the goal. We're always making our technology better, and we are adding new features every 2 weeks. So we just actually deployed some new features yesterday, but that's our goal, is to find true influence, and more importantly, who is being influenced. So I think that's a good question, and there's a funny kind of analogy I've heard used before that at a conference that I like to share, which is that influencer marketing is still very much in a nascent stage, but just like digital marketing was 12 or 15 years ago, it's like a gold rush right now. And like any gold rush, you've got fools going into deserts, you've got gold diggers, you've got vultures, you've got bandits. And so it's like a very dangerous place to be in, right? When it's like being kind of like unregulated. But at the same time, you got people who go in and find gold, right? So that's the kind of current state of it. And it makes it like a really difficult place for a lot of people to find a place, whether you're creators, content creators, or whether you're marketers, because the risks are high, the rewards are also potentially extremely high, but it creates a lot of tension as well between the different parties. So what I think there's two kind of big trends that are happening right now. The first one is the professionalization of the industry and the fact that it's not a professional industry right now. So marketers are very organized on their side. And like I said, you know, there've been a lot of vultures and pretenders and desperados coming in and selling them on vision of what influencer marketing should be and letting them down. But they are organized and able to get through this and get to a solution where eventually it will work for them. Creators on the other hand, are not organized. So a lot of creators like don't know what marketers expect of them, or aspiring creators don't understand what marketers expect of them, what their true value should be, how to package their value, what their rights are, what their obligations should be. And the fact that they're not organized creates an opportunity for marketers, but also a risk because you don't know who you're going to be dealing with. So in Australia, in the US, now over the last couple of months, we've seen organizations starting of influencers kind of coming together and not unionizing per se, but at least creating like a professional body that you can belong to. And again, that's around the rights and obligations of influencers, you know, so should you be, you know, should you be licensing your content out? Should you be seeing like feature fees when your like faces used like on other places? What's the right like value, like all those kind of things, right? Like what is your code of conduct? So I think these things don't exist in South Africa yet, but South Africa is often lagging behind like other markets, and it's completely new in like say Australia, US, and some of those markets. So I would love for it to come sooner to South Africa because I think South Africa would benefit from it immensely. And I would love to see that initiative start. And in fact, we'd love to stand behind kind of like that initiative if it was to start. The second thing is it's a much bigger thing on social media right now. And it's not just to do with influencer marketing, but influencer marketing has is suffering quite a bit from cancel culture. So, you know, if you're familiar with cancel culture, the idea that, you know, the online space is not a particularly safe space right now, that's not particularly prone to nuance, and where anything can flare up really quickly. And for brands, it makes it quite dangerous. And for influencers or creators, it makes it like also sometimes a terrible space, you know? So we've seen it, you know, recently with like campaigns that have gone awry or, you know, where like there's not a lot of benefit of doubt given, but rather just instantly like kind of backlash and sensitivities rising and those kind of things. And I think cancel culture is like a much bigger thing, but it's something that as influencers, you know, in some ways we should look to tackle, think about. And in other ways, you know, if influencers don't look after one another, if content creators, aspiring content creators take digs at one another and don't look after one another, then what does that mean for the marketers that are trying to come in or the new people that are trying to come in? It doesn't make it like a very attractive space. So I think there's definitely some room for a little bit more nuance, a little bit more empathy, and a little bit more support from creators towards other creators.
Yes, absolutely. I think it should be one strong community amongst all the content creators and influencers in the country. You should stand together as one.
So I think, first of all, there's a very big misconception about Humanz that a lot of people make because of how the platform is designed and our interface. And maybe it's something we thought about a lot, but we haven't solved it 100% yet, which is the fact that the vast majority of campaigns that are run on Humanz are not run by humans. There are some campaigns that are run by teams, some of our teams behind the scenes, because we're helping marketers, you know, but we're not an agency. We have customer success managers who come in and help marketers execute campaigns if that's necessary. But the vast majority of campaigns are executed by marketers themselves or agencies that have licensed our platform and are using the technology. So when you're dealing with a campaign, it's really important to know who you're dealing with. And sometimes you'll see who the agency is because they've disclosed it. And sometimes they want to stay anonymous, so it will look like it's Humanz running it instead. We'll say Humanz. And sometimes, again, it is Humanz running it. So always, it's good for the person who's putting the bid to know who they're dealing with and try to understand, you know, and often the brief will say that in the brief itself. Sure. And then when influencers bid, there are a couple of things that go into the equation, like that most people look at. But like I said, the primary thing, and our platform allows marketers to filter bids based on that, is your audience quality. So how much of your audience is real and active, and the fit between that audience and the marketer's target audience, right? Okay. So that's like a really important thing. The second one is the content theme and what it's about. So some campaigns are all about conversations and, you know, getting kind of debate going or getting conversations going or getting feedback. So their engagement rate becomes like a massive metric that people look at. So number of followers is relevant. It's all about engagement rate. And sometimes it's about getting beautiful creative and beautiful content, whether it's for reviews or whether it's for so the Zara campaign comes to mind that ran last year around that.
Yes.
And so if that's the case, then people look at the quality of the content created, typically by looking on that influencer's feed, or secondly, now with like the content rating that they're also getting, from other campaigns and from other, or the endorsements they're getting by other influencers inside on their Humanz profile. So when you bid, there's a list of bids that appears to the marketer. And rather than having to go manually through often thousands of bids that they receive, they can filter it based on these different criteria and understand. They then often look at the feed and the content and see, is there a fit and is the kind of content that I'm looking for? Now they've got the ability as well to ask specific questions. So the answers to those questions can become quite important. Not see what's your shoe size, but sometimes, are you a customer for our business or this or that? They can also see whether the influencers mentioned the brand before or not, and if they're a genuine fan or not a genuine fan. And then the last part is the motivation. So right now, what we do is we always encourage people to drop a motivation in chat as to why they would be considered for this campaign or what would be the ideal fit for this campaign. But within the next 2 builds, we're going to have a different way for people to motivate as well. So that's coming in the next release, and people will be able to explain and basically introduce themselves and talk about why they should be considered for this campaign. So that's also a great question. A lot of people also think that the only ways marketers work with influencers is via the public briefs that are in the campaign. And very often, sometimes they work only with private briefs, and I'll explain what that is now. Sometimes they work only with public briefs, but most of the time they combine both. And that's what when I was talking earlier about the synergies between the type of platforms, this is what I mean by that. I'm sorry, my daughter's screaming. I don't know if you can hear her.
No worries.
So I'll have to go check when we're done. But she's with her mom, so it's fine.
We'll wrap up.
She's with her mom, so it's okay. So basically, when a marketer comes into our platform, they have access to a search engine. And the search engine is not only for people who have signed up to Humanz. That's really important. Like I said, initially when we built the 2 systems, the app and the marketer platform, they were not talking to one another. It's only more recently we made them communicate. And so within the search engine, marketers can find anyone in South Africa or any of the countries we're live in that has over a certain number of followers on a platform, and then look at all the data. Meaning they can create a brief and send an invite by DM or in private to influencers and invite them to the campaign, whether or not the campaign is published on our app, right? So that's not connected to the 2. So you could run a campaign now with 10 influencers, and it's not published at all on our app. And in fact, most of the campaigns, start this way, or at least have a component which is this way for what they dub lead influencers or just influencers they want to work with and have worked in the past and want to invite, right? Everything else works the same. The contract, the payment, the brief, the task, everything works exactly the same. The only difference is they can also choose to say, hey, actually, I want to make this brief public, and I want to see if anybody's interested in putting their hand up and saying, I'd like to be part of it too. So combining both actually gives you a really good benefit, because you have the influencers you want to work with, and then you got people maybe you never knew about or never kind of thought about that can also put up their hand and say, hey, I want to do this as well. So that's the difference between the 2, but they're very synergistic and they work really well together.
Absolutely. So a bit of both is the perfect blend, right?
Very often, yeah, 100%. So I actually see those discussions a lot on our own community board, right? Which we read very often and kind of keep up to date on it. And obviously, influencer marketing is, people say, what it's about the bag. Is that what you say in South Africa? That's the expression that's used. Right? So obviously, it's a form of work and needs to be remunerated. But I think it's also quite short term to think about it solely this way. And what I mean by that is, marketers are not looking for people with 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 followers to post a message on their behalf, like I said earlier. They're looking for people that have built true influence within specific communities, or are able to influence people, like a specific audience that they've built, or people outside of that audience that fit within that same kind of platform. So if you're serious about making money as a influencer down the line, then you need to be building that audience and your connections to that community. Influence comes from 3 things. Influence comes from your perceived expertise. So who are you to be talking about this, and are you skilled in it? So if you're fashionista, do you dress nicely? Can you give good recommendations? If you're a fitness influencer, do you look good? And do you do good training programs, right? So your perceived expertise. The second one is about your perceived intentions. So are you in it for the quick money, or are you in it because you have your followers and your community's best intentions at heart? So you're doing this and you happen to be paid and you disclose it to your followers, but you're not doing it just for the money. Do you know what I mean? Like you have a bigger presence around that topic that's continuously happening. And so even though this is a paid promotion, people are willing to listen to you because they know it's part of a bigger thing that you do, and you have good intention towards them.
With it.
And you're consistent with it, exactly. And the third thing is about your existing links to the community. So who else in the community are you connected to? Who else are you helping? What are they saying about you? And this is where influence comes from. So if you think about it, it doesn't come from, I have 2,000 followers and I'm going to take that message and post it, pay me now. Yes, it is. It exists, and it exists a lot in like any profession, like any work. To be truly successful, there's no such thing as overnight success, and you might be able to get a job here and there every now and then. But if you want to be really successful, it takes hard work, it takes dedication, and it takes consistency to build that influence and that audience, that real audience, so that you can have like continuous income around it. So I think it's a bit of a continuation of what I said kind of previously, right? Your reputation. So brands are looking for people that will influence around specific communities with specific audiences that they're trying to target. So if you're Nike and you're trying to launch a new shoe for women who love running, then is your audience made up of women who love running, and you speak a lot about sports or running or fashion or whatever is relevant to that. So this is the kind of stuff they will be looking for. So understanding what you are about and where you wield that influence is really key. Now, outside of that, to be building connections with that brand and to be able to like speak to that brand directly, well, start tagging them in posts first and foremost with you wearing the content, and show them your content creation capabilities. Because most big brands and big businesses run, social listening platforms. I'm not talking about Humanz. I'm talking about different platforms that let them hear or see who is posting them on social media. And if they see beautiful content that you've posted on social media, tagging them, they might say, wow, this is somebody we should keep an eye out for. So that's one way to kind of, if you don't have their attention, to potentially get their attention. And the second thing is obviously to go on Humanz or similar platforms and bid on campaigns and use all the tips that I shared a little bit earlier, for the campaigns that you think are specific for you. But again, I would say it really starts with saying, what am I about? What is my audience about? And understanding who your audience is. Don't answer the question. Don't try to answer, are you an influencer or not? Try to answer, who are you influencing? And know that, have that knowledge.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pierre. I really, really appreciate all this insight.